Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Mel Phillips. Mel is a first-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2026, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, how he's been enjoying his first year, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. As always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to Experience Darden so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Mel Phillips. Mel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. How's everything going?
It's been good. It's been great. I got back to Charlottesville actually just yesterday, and it is very funny being in town with snow all over the ground. I never expected that when I came to Darden, that there would be snow.
Yeah, the mid-Atlantic, the weather is always hard to predict, but we don't get a ton of snow these days. For some people, it can be very exciting. For other people, maybe not so much.
No, don't get me wrong. It is definitely very exciting. But I guess just as like a New Yorker, when I thought of going to Darden, I was like, oh, that's the South. It'll be nice all year round. But clearly I didn't do my homework that well.
Well, despite our efforts here on the podcast to convince everybody that it's 72 degrees and sunny all the time in Charlottesville, it unfortunately is not. Occasionally it does snow. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Here you are, entering the spring semester. Exciting time, lots happening, to be sure. But before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit more about who you are and your background. So tell us more about you.
Sure. My name is Mel Phillips. I am a first year at Darden. I grew up in New York City and went to undergrad at Colgate University, where I walked onto the swim team and decided to major in classics. And then actually, quick story, after my sophomore year, I developed a shoulder injury and couldn't swim anymore. And then I walked onto the diving team and taught myself how to dive at a D1 level through trial and error. And so there's a lot of amazing videos of me belly flopping into the pool from many different angles. Highly recommend finding those if you can. But anywho, my career started in the financial services industry, doing PR for a company called IHS Market. I worked for them for 2 years, which was great because I needed to develop a understanding of financial markets, which I didn't get as a classics major, but got that there. And then I went to a PR agency at the pandemic, and there I was assigned to a climate tech startup account. The agency worked primarily with crypto firms and financial services startups, but I was lucky enough to be put on this climate tech account, and it was just absolutely, it was a big eureka moment for me, where for the first time in my career, I was just so enthused by the research and the content generation that I was doing. And I just realized that I needed to pivot my career towards the clean energy industry. And from there, I decided that I needed to leave that agency, and I found a different marketing agency that works strictly with clean energy companies. I worked there for about 2 years before I decided that it was time to get more experience, and found my way to Darden.
I understand from our prior conversation that you have some prior podcasting experience and maybe even some voiceover work. Is that right?
That's absolutely true. One of the skills that I learned at Colgate was how to use digital music studio software. And in both of my agency roles, I was helping to create podcasts on the other end of things, where I was interviewing people and then doing the audio engineering to make sure that everything sounded great. And then in my last role, I was doing voiceovers to help spread the word on why EVs are great and how to overcome the issues with them. And that's on Yeah, the Zero Emissions Transportation Association website.
Did you enjoy the voiceover work?
I loved it. It was really fun. It is. I'm one thing that I'm sure you might know. Like hearing yourself speak is never. It's never the best, but once you get over that, it is very, um, it's very rewarding. And uh, the other thing about doing the audio editing after the fact for your own voice is you'll hear things that sound terrible to you, but no one else can hear them. And that's just one thing that you learn being on the other side of things.
Yeah, the thing I never get over, and I'm not entirely sure why this is how different you sound on a recording versus how you think you actually sound.
Yeah.
Big difference between those two things. And I'm still not sure why. I'm sure there's a perfectly logical scientific explanation for this, but
So I've heard um, that it's a psychological phenomenon because when think about when you look in the mirror, you notice the imperfections because you're staring at your own face all the time. And the second that you see even the slightest imperfection, you fixate on that and it becomes the only thing that you notice. And then the same thing happens when you hear your voice. You hear your voice all the time. And then when you hear it in recording, you can isolate what you deem to be the imperfections. And that's all you can think about. But in reality, no one's fixating that much on every minute detail. And so from what I know, that's the distinction, but can't be sure.
sounds plausible to me. And you've done some voiceover work. You know what I'm talking about here. When you listen back, and it's like, oh
Yeah,
wow, that's how I sound. Okay.
absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about how you got interested in pursuing an MBA.
Of course.
What led you to that decision that this was going to be the right next step for you?
Yeah. So I had that decision when I was pivoting from doing PR for financial services companies to doing marketing for climate tech companies. In that transition, I knew that I wanted to do as much as I could with my career to help accelerate the clean energy transition. And in the short term, that meant just getting into the field and doing what I could. But I knew that in the long term, I wanted to upskill and develop a stronger business acumen so that I could help make the strategic decisions that would help new startups succeed as much as possible. And um, in my mind, that always meant that I needed to do more than marketing. I mean, I love marketing. It is obviously a very important part of any business. But I wanted to be more on the business strategy side of things or the finance side of things. And that in order to get there, to convince a company that I could handle those jobs and then down the line would be able to take on more and more. To me, that just screamed I should get an MBA. And so it was a part of it was in the back of my mind from the minute that I signed up for that marketing agency that I would learn as much as I could about the industry, get that background, and then get the MBA.
What was interesting to you about climate tech, this kind of green technology, zero emission? Why did that resonate with you so much?
It's just the most fascinating challenge of our generation in that it's so widespread. There's so much different ways to tackle it, and it requires everyone doing their part and working together. And um, so, like, I've always been the type of person that loves matrices and how things mesh together. And like that's like think about my classics background and thinking about ancient Greeks and ancient Romans and how all the mythology overlaps. In my mind, it's a very similar thing with the clean energy industry, where the electric grid is just this like weaving fabric that holds together our entire economy. And uh, retrofitting everything and replacing the oil industry that has is the foundation of everything that we currently know with clean energy sources is just such a monumental challenge that I want to it's just so interesting to me on so many levels on how difficult this is going to be. And so figuring out how to do this from in a way that is going to be like successful is just it just sparks all of my creative muscles in a way that I haven't had in the financial services and crypto industry. Um, but I guess the other element is that uh, there's there's many different roadblocks to a clean energy transition. There's the fact that people people just there's a lot of not in my backyard mentality, NIMBYism, and in order to overcome that and change the sentiment around clean energy technologies, then at the same time you need to do that, and then you also need to make it just make the business case for clean energy technologies, and that is what screams, and I need to understand the business behind it and not just the marketing and the PR behind it, and to tie it back into why I need an MBA to help solve this challenge, because it's not just about the um the optics, but it's also we need to make sure that the business case is rock solid from every standpoint.
How did you get interested in Darden? What appealed to you about the Darden School?
The Darden school. So the initial attraction was the fact that it's a case method school, and that everything that I heard was that Darden would provide me with the best possible education of any business school program. I came to business school to learn as much as I possibly could. And because I knew that if I was going to make this investment of time in financially make this investment in myself, I wanted to get as much as I possibly could out of it, so that I could have as big of an impact as possible. And that just screamed Darden. But then the more that I learned, the more it just clicked as this is the perfect possible school for me. Learning about Charlottesville, and I'm not sure, this was a surprise to me, but there is so much climate tech and clean energy in Charlottesville. A lot of both headquarters, companies that are headquartered here, and then just regional offices in Charlottesville. And I've been able to meet up with professionals to grab a cup of coffee uh, after a school day and talk to them about myself and my career aspirations. And that was a big surprise to me, that I would be able to do that in Charlottesville. I mean, obviously, if you go to a school in New York or another major city, you expect to have companies based there, but Charlottesville is a small college town, and to have that ability to still engage with the energy ecosystem was very impressive. And then what won me over was Darden days, coming onto campus, and I the moment. So the moment that I knew I'm coming to the school was during the mock class that we had during Darden days. I was the cold call for that class, and it was the most exhilarating moment of my learning experience thus far. And just it was intimidating, but then after the fact, I just felt so rewarded, and that was just the most fun class experience that I'd ever had. And I just knew that that is what I wanted my entire MBA experience of learning to be like. And So between that and just all of the amazing people that I met during Darden days, by the end of that weekend, I just knew that I couldn't see myself going to any other school. Darden was the place for me. It had the type of people that I resonate with.
Do you remember the case for your cold call?
Of course, it was I don't remember the exact company, but it was a winery, a local winery, and we had to decide. Uh, they had like some leftover wine from the previous season, and they needed to decide where to focus their attention. If it should be on like which channel they should use to sell those leftover cases of wine through, direct to consumer, through their downtown uh what's a through their downtown channel, their pop-up shop, or through the winery itself. And picking which channel would mean building that sales channel up and thinking through the long-term effects of what would be most important for the company.
That sounds like a fun case, and I'm always impressed by how much people can remember about the case discussions that they've had. But it makes sense just given how much time he spent, 75, 85 minutes talking about the case. There's all these facts, the story. There's all kinds of discussion. I mean, it makes sense that it sticks with you.
And that's the entire beauty of the case method, is that it works hand in hand with the psychology of how people learn, because like learning is about repetition. That's how you get something to really stick into your mind. And like the Darden system of you get a case, you read through it yourself and tackle it yourself. Then you go to your learning team, tackle it with them, and then you go to the classroom and discuss it as a class. And then all of those concepts build upon one another. And then you review everything before the final. And by the time that you've done all of that repetition, like it sticks. And like I definitely there's plenty of stuff from my undergrad that I learned in lecture based classes that I just would never be able to remember. But the stuff that I'm learning here at Darden, I feel pretty darn confident that it's going to stick around.
So you're obviously very much still in the midst of your first year. You're just
Yeah.
rounding the corner here into the spring semester. But if you can remember back to August, September, the adjustment to being in an MBA program, what was that like? Were there any learning curves for you?
Yeah. There's so the way that I think about it, starting at Darden, uh, it's kind of like stepping onto a treadmill. And or those walkways at airports, those like walking escalators. So you you're you step on and you have that adjustment period where, oh my God, I'm moving so much faster than I've ever moved before in my life. There's like so much knowledge being thrown at you, and getting like myself prepared to like absorb as much as I could, like both from academics, from clubs, and then recruiting and all of that. It was definitely a lot, and I remember in the early days, like there were some physical headaches at the end of the day, because my brain was just physically telling me like, hey, like that's enough knowledge for one day. But like it was it's just every week is just so rewarding, and because you really are taking in so much. And I mean, I just got back from winter break. I met up with some friends that I haven't seen since before I started my time at Darden, and I'm just hanging out with them. And I feel like it's been years since we've last seen each other. And they had to remind me at one point that it's been less than 6 months, and it just feels like so much time and growth has happened between now and then. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a adjustment period.
How did you figure out how to prioritize all those things that are competing for your time? What schedule works best for you? I feel like that is definitely something that we hear from students on the podcast that they have to sort out relatively quickly during their time at
Yeah,
Darden.
with my agency background, prioritizing overlapping deliverables is something that I've always been needing to do. In my last job, I actually was introduced to this productivity software platform, Asana, that I'm sure a lot of people have used at this point. And I've taken that to Darden with me and use that to make sure that I'm staying on top of all of the to dos that I need to get done. Um, but then at the same time, um, that's not to say that I walked in doing everything perfect and the way that I'm doing it now. It is a large degree of trial and error. You're going to walk in and say, this is how I think this is what's going to work best for me on prepping for cases on a week to week basis. And then a couple of weeks will go by and you'll realize, wait, I'm not being as efficient as I could be. I need to try something else. And you're constantly adjusting and tweaking your week to week strategy. And just, you just need to realize that you can't put all this pressure on yourself to be perfect from the get go. That's why we're in an MBA program, is because there's a lot to learn. And so, like, embracing the fact that there's going to be trial and error, engaging with your peers and say, this is how I'm doing things. How are you doing things? And then you'll figure out what works for you in the long run.
So, what section are you?
Section B, go birds.
What's your favorite thing about being a member of Section B?
Section B, every section has a different mascot. And for us, as the birds, we have both a little big bird, and then we have a big bird costume. And every year they select one person to be the mascot of the section for the year. And like early on, the second years were saying who's going to be the mascot, who's going to be the mascot. And by the end of the first week, we had to decide it because we had a Darden Cup event coming up. And someone needed to show up in costume for that. And at the end of the class, someone stood up and said, wait, we need to decide who's the mascot's going to be. And everyone's unanimously said, Mel. And from that moment on, I've been the mascot for the section. And I will say that, like, being just like chosen as the mascot, I'm not sure, like, some people said I have given off mascot energy in that first week, and that's why I was chosen. But being selected was a very, like, that was very heartwarming, made me feel even more confident that I had found my home at Darden. And so that was that's a wonderful memory. I will say that, like, being in the mascot costume during Darden Cup events is not, like, it as fun as it is not necessarily my favorite memory. It's a little, being in a mascot costume is a little sweaty, but it is sure is fun seeing everyone's face as you dance around at a Darden Cup event. And one thing that I never expected is having students' kids come up to me to take a photo. And I never thought that while getting an MBA, I would know what it feels like to be working at Disneyland or being one of the people in Times Square in a costume, and to take pictures with kids. And it's pretty heartwarming.
I love that. You're just Big Bird to them.
I
Like, oh my gosh,
I
she's here
am
at the Darden
yeah,
Cup. I got to take a picture.
I am Big Bird. That is just a part of my personality at this point.
So you came to Darden with this significant interest in green energy, clean tech. Have you continued to stay engaged with that? Is that something that continues to
Oh,
be your career goal?
absolutely. I've stayed very adamant about that being my path. So I came into Darden with the thought process that, like, if things went perfectly for me, I would wind up in climate tech venture capital. And like when I first like got to Darden, I thought that seemed like a little bit of a reach for me. It seemed like that would be too good to be true. And I'm pleased to say that like with all of the resources and the amazing people that I've met at Darden, it's never seemed so real and achievable. A couple of weeks back, I officially got selected for an in-semester internship through the rest of the school year, and I'm working with a climate tech VC firm. And I could not be more thrilled to be able to take everything that I'm learning in the classroom and apply it to the climate tech world. It just seems like all the pieces are falling into place.
That is awesome, Mel. Congratulations on that. That kind of brings
Thank
me
you.
to the next question is obviously we're here on we're right in the midst of J term right now. Spring semester's on the horizon. What are you looking forward to in the months ahead?
Well, the thing that stands out at the end of the next quarter, we have a trip that we have organized to Peru. That one of my classmates, Alberto, um, absolute character, amazing guy, and he just very early on decided that he wanted to organize a trek for the Darden class to go to Peru and show everyone why he loves it so much. And he did such a good job of organizing. And we now have, I think it's upward or just under 70 people in our class that are signed up and going to be going. And that just is, it's going to be an absolute blast traveling with everyone. I got a taste of what it's like to travel with Darden students during winter break. We did our ski trip to Park City, and that was just so incredible. But I can only imagine that being with everyone in Peru is just going to be that much more fun.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I love to hear about Darden students connecting and going to visit their classmates' home countries. That happens pretty regularly at
Yeah,
Darden. And one of the benefits of being in business school, I did not anticipate when I started hosting this podcast. People started sharing those stories and anecdotes, and it was great to hear. Obviously, you get this global network, and good example of it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Mel, obviously business school keeps you really busy, and but yet you seem like somebody who has a lot of different interests. What do you like to do in your free time? What do you like to do outside of school?
Outside of school, well, one thing that is like periphery outside of school, and my favorite thing that I have to mention on this podcast, it's also another one of the reasons why I came to Darden, is the Darden was the only school that I saw that had an improv club. And that is without a doubt my favorite part of each week of the Darden experience is showing up to improv club and just playing games with my classmates. It's so interesting, like how useful that those skills are to both the Darden experience and to business. Just being able to think on your feet and just say, I don't know what the prompt is going to be, but I'm just going to take this and run with it. That is something that is just extremely fun, and I highly recommend anyone that has the ability, that sees an improv troupe at their disposal, to join, dive in, and just let yourself be vulnerable, because it is just so fun and so rewarding to do that. Outside of improv and fully outside of the Darden classroom, I love to swim. Still, we've gotten a group of both former swimmers and people that just enjoy swimming for workouts into a group chat, and we'll organize going to the North Grounds pool, which is just that's another huge selling point for me for coming to Darden, is just having that accessibility between heading home and um, going to class. Like just being to stop by a pool that's on the way is just that's great access. And then when I have time, I love to go to the rock climbing gym with my classmates. Just having all of that at your disposal is incredible.
Yeah, not too many business schools with such a nice pool facility just steps away
No,
from the look. I mean, like literally, it's maybe a 200 yards from the front doors of Darden to the North Grounds pool.
it's wild how nice it is. And it's also wild how that's not even the nicest pool that UVA has to offer. Like there's just so many amazing facilities at this school. It's I feel very lucky that I have access to all of them.
Well, Mel, ask you last question here. Wrap up with the same last question of all of our guests. What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners? Something for them to think about as they consider their own MBA journeys.
It's a great question, and I hope it's not too cheesy, but I think that the best thing that I think is an all-encompassing piece of advice is to be authentic to yourself and to really think through who you are, what your background is, and what your goal is after business school, and to think through what types of resources you need from your school in order to get from A to B. And if you actually do that exercise properly, then that's going to help you in every step of the journey in terms of creating the best possible application that's going to speak to the school, because they're going to see that you're not just trying to fill a template, but you're actually telling them who you are and how their school is going to help you achieve your goals. That's what they want to hear. And then at the same time, you're going to help yourself narrow down the schools and figure out that X, Y, and Z are not institutions that that they're not the best choice for you for your needs, because they actually don't have the resources or what you need to accomplish what you need to. So I think that like it's very easy to just immediately jump into answering the essay questions and just filling out the applications for MBA programs. But you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you don't like first and foremost understand who you are and where you want to be. That is critical to the process. And then the other thing is when you're trying to figure out after you've gotten into schools and you're figuring out which school to go to, and like the most important thing that you can do is engage with other prospective students, figure out who else is going to be your classmate, and imagine spending the next 2 years with them. Find your friends.
It's always nice when guests come on the podcast and share the exact same advice that the admissions committee shares with prospective students. We always appreciate that. The best applications start from a place of self-understanding and introspection and reflection. And that's something that we consistently emphasize with candidates, that this is not a job application. You are applying to join a community, place where your experiences and perspectives will not only shape your learning experience, but also the experience of others. And the more you understand yourself, the better we'll be able to learn about you through your application and the application process. And also the clearer picture you'll have of what kind of school you're looking for and what's important to you. What are your priorities as you consider a business school? I think it's very easy to get caught up in rankings and other people's opinions about MBA programs. But at the end of the day, it's not only 2 years of your life. It's a network that will be with you for the rest of your life and career. And, you want to be around people you enjoy. You want to be part of a network that's going to be valuable and fulfilling for you. And so no small decision for sure, but it all starts from self-understanding. So Mel, thank you so much for your time today. It's great talking with you, and best of luck in the spring semester. Exciting news about that internship. And, I look forward to hearing more about how things go for you in the months ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brett. This has been lovely.
And that was my conversation with Mel Phillips, a first-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2026. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything like us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.